once again, the raksha method has been flipped on top of itself. And as it turns out, you can get over 30 kills per hour at this boss now. So without any further delay, let's go ahead and get right into this guide. So this rotation actually comes from the one and only Couchy. He has been doing endgame PVM for a very long time, and he happened to upload a video showcasing 30 plus KPH at raksha and had the rotation written down in his description. Now I saw this, thought it was pretty cool, and then didn't bother learning it at all until I was on stream, and another high level PVMer named Marwood said he would write out the rotation for me, and well, here we are now doing a video on it. I just wanted to give credit where the rotations come from real quick, as I haven't really seen an updated rotation for this in PVME. The old one still, I believe, uses a meteor swap and has a lot of switches involved with it. It gets about the same kill times, maybe a slight average faster, but the KPH is a lot lower. Now yes, this method is a bit involved with arrows and EOFs and a Nami swap, but once you learn the muscle memory for it, it's honestly not that bad of a rotation. It's basically just using range to its full potential. And even if you don't think you're quite up to the task of doing this rotation, there might be some helpful information here for you regardless. So without any further delay, let's go ahead and get into this guide. So as far as the preset is concerned, it's just a standard full 5-piece Dracolich set. I just have my Slayer perks on here. It doesn't matter. Obviously, you don't need Slayer perks to do raksha because none of them work there. They just happen to be on here from doing other stuff and whatnot. Just toss on any extra perks you might need or want. Grim is very important, as this is a pretty crit reliant rotation. FSOA here, you could honestly use any staff. This is just a one slot item to allow us to stall Tsunami. So you could use literally any staff here. It's not going to matter as long as it gets the effect off. So it's not going to really matter what staff you have here as long as you can press Tsunami with it. Stalker's Ring, I believe it is better average as far as damage is concerned, and I think honestly overall it's better just because you're getting a crit damage as well as crit chance. Essentially you're sacrificing 1% crit chance for an additional 3% crit damage, which I think makes up for it, at least on the average. The Zuck Cape is pretty standard, nothing really special here. If you only have normal mode, obviously it's going to work, and we don't use Deadshot in this rotation, so I guess technically you could say Zuck Cape isn't a requirement, but the stats are really nice and you probably should just have one regardless. Now for the EOFs, it's kind of just a standard range build. It is Dark Bow, SGB, and ECB. And for the quivers here, you could just roll 2 quivers as you're not using any of the actual Hydrix bolts. I just have mine set up with Hydrix bolts in them for other things like chinning and whatnot. But the arrows I am using are Death Spores, Full Arrows, and Wen Arrows. And you'll want Wen Arrows to be in the quiver slot. So when you start off your pre-build, you're building up Wen arrow stacks. So essentially when you actually go to use them, you'll be at full stacks, which is massive damage. The full arrows are basically allowing you to stall out from proccing your Wen arrows and having that damage go. Because once you activate the Wen arrows by using a threshold, you have a set amount of time before you start building up stacks again. So proccing that at the right time is important, but again, it's built into the rotations. And Death Spore allow you to get a free Death Swiftness out and a free Incendiary shot. I do have all the rune pouches here, and I am on the Ancient Spellbook for a reason. I am using Smoke Cloud to release the stall. I believe if you're on Lunars and use Borrowed Power, it works as well, but honestly, I can't remember. And I'd rather not eat up a bunch of Borrowed Power charges, just to do something that I could use on the Ancient Spellbook. And the rest of the preset is pretty self-explanatory. A Vit Pot is nice for the phase transitions when all of the rocks are crashing down on you. Blessed Flask is kind of unnecessary. You take a lot of damage, so if you use Powder of Penance, you can just have that there, and that'll more than take care of the prayer requirement. Vuln Bombs are pretty self-explanatory. You throw them down, you get 10% damage. They're pretty obvious. You will need combat dummies as you are releasing a stall before you start the fight and starting up your DS on the tick that you start the kill. If you don't have a bunch of extra combat dummies and you have a decent amount of cash line flying around, you can just buy like 100 Elder Rune Body +5s, or any of the Elder Rune pieces I think work for this. And then each disassemble gives you like, I think 70 or 80 components that are used inside of the dummy creation. So usually I'll just do a buy limit of 100, dump some cash into it, make them all into dummies, and not have to worry about it for quite a while. If you want to do it a little bit on the cheap side, you can just do huge plated steel salvage, or if you can find another salvage that's really cheap that are plated, you can go ahead and do that. And other than that, that's pretty much it on the preset. Now for supporting gear, this is where things do change up a bit. I am not using any of my standard relics on this one. I'm actually using heightened senses for the extra 10% adrenaline on the top end, Berserker's Fury for juicing that relic and getting all the damage you can, and Font of Life is just there because that's what I can fit in this slot. If I could fit something else, that'd be fantastic, but we're not allowed to yet. We've been on 650 relic power for eons. But I digress. We will be using a Calg Demon because we want all of the crit chance we can possibly get. And then I do use Lanta Sticks, and sometimes I pop Spirit Weed, sometimes I don't. Powder of Penance is going to carry a lot of prayer. However, they are kind of expensive. They have dropped a little bit recently. I believe they were like 1.3 mil each at one point, but 900k is not terrible for them. But if you'd rather just use a cheaper prayer source, feel free to do so. And I do keep an overload in the preset, so that way if I'm halfway through a kill and my overload's about to run out, I can just click there, and that way when I'm banking, I can just right click load last preset from the bank, and then go over to the altar and then surge around, go to the Adren crystal, and kind of rinse and repeat. It helps optimize the bank time. It is a small thing, but when you're trying to maximize KPH, it is helpful. Now I'm going to bring the rotation up here on screen, and the only quote-unquote difficult part of this rotation is just memorizing it, because it's not really anything that even I've used before. It's kind of out there. It is optimized for this boss and for Dracolich armor specifically. You might be able to use it at a couple other places, but I'm not sure on that one yet. And I guess the only tech thing on here is stalling a Nami and then releasing with a Gricko. And the order of operations there specifically, once you drop your dummy, I'll try to reiterate this. We'll see how well it works in the example kills, but it is target cycle, smoke cloud, equip your bow, and hit Gricko. So it's 4 inputs in one tick. It's one of those things where if you have these on kind of awkward binds, then it can be slightly obnoxious, but once you memorize kind of the pattern of the inputs and practice it a little bit, you should be fine. And then other than that, it's a pretty straightforward range rotation. You're just trying to remember what abilities go where and what arrows to put on at what time. Again, it's just one of those things where it's just a memorization game, and then once you have it down, it's pretty simple. Now, something that confused me and I didn't realize was happening until I've done about an hour or so of this is that if you look right here where you ECB again on the first DS, this is about like the middle of phase 2 or just at start of phase 2, around there, is that the hits don't line up if you're looking at this straightforward, but for some reason when you ECB here, you get a free auto attack off, which happens to count for a stack, so which allows you to just dark bow there and get a third dark bow hit, which then allows the Gricko to get to 3 stacks because it rolls all the way up to 4 because you have the bulk spec active, and then gives you the 3 additional. So then you rapid fire for the full 8, that leaves you on 3 again, and then that SGB there gets the full value with the extra arrow and does an absolute crap load of damage. Now, what isn't on this rotation and is something I do, I add a frag shot just before the Gricko on phase 4, and that's just because I don't really bring a fleeting boot swap. If you want to bring one, go for it, but I like getting the full value out of the rapid fire, and so I just added a global cooldown with a bleed. If I haven't used corrupt shot on the earlier part of this rotation, then I will go ahead and use it before Gricko, but sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. So I usually just end up hitting frag shot anyways. And other than that, like I said many times before, it's just a matter of memorizing the rotation and going out and practicing this. Before we get into the example kills, I should make a note here. This rotation has probably taken me, I'd say, about 4 or 5 hours here and there. Like I'd go out and do like a half hour, take a little break, go ahead and start practicing again. again. And I would just try and get through certain checkpoints in the rotation to help memorize. And then once I started getting kills, they were a bit shaky because I didn't fully memorize it, but I just kept practicing with it and kept playing around, trying to get better at executing the rotation. And any of the troubles I found that I was doing was I either didn't press the inputs correctly, or maybe a little game tick of lag or something happened. And I did get a little bit annoyed while learning this, but now that I've gone through and actually done the learning process, it's pretty straightforward now. So if you find yourself not able to instantly do this rotation here and learn this method, just note it does take time for some people, myself included. There is one more mechanic that I should probably mention that is getting used here, and that is a concept known as when sparring, which sounds a lot more complicated than it actually is. All you're doing is, on this Gricko right here, you already have your when spore arrows equipped. So what you do is, as if you're same ticking food, like you're hitting blubber into brew or something like that, you're going to hit your Gricko input and then your death spore input in that order right on the global cooldown end. And because of how the timing works of when it calculates stacks for each of these arrows, it happens to line up to where you can gain stacks for both on a single Gricko input. Now, I haven't heard anything about this concept getting removed. I don't think it's going to get patched anytime soon. I'm also not in the loop 24/7, so maybe someone has said something, but it's a mechanic that works right now. If it does get patched, I'm sure this rotation will still probably work out, with the tier 100 upgrade being in game, or some minor changes can be made to it. But for right now, it does work. And I think I've yapped for long enough, so let's actually get into a couple of example kills. Forgot to put this in the gear section, but I am using Majrat Aura over Reckless. The rock damage adds up quite a lot on Reckless, and I actually notice a little bit of inconsistency when using Reckless. I think it has something to do with the fact of you're getting a 5% damage buff inside of DS, whereas Reckless is mostly for the level increase. I'm not sure why this is the case. I always thought Reckless was better, but I guess not. But we will be using Majrat Aura. Alrighty, I have the preset loaded up and ready to go. We'll go ahead and grab some adrenaline. I'm actually going to turn off the voiceovers just so I'm not competing with Raksha. Turn on our prayers. Now on screen somewhere, I'm gonna have the current arrow equipped, or if there's an arrow swap, I'll have it somewhere on screen denoting that. I don't know how I'm going to notate it yet, but somewhere on screen there will be a indication of what arrow is equipped, because if I tried to say the arrows with the rotation, that I'd get all jumbled up very quickly. But we'll go ahead and click on the training dummy, install a Nami, click back on the adrenaline crystal, gain some adrenaline. Go ahead and enter the portal. Security gate, hit start. I like to dive to this tile here, drop my dummy, target cycle, smoke cloud, and a Gricko, dazing shot, dismiss the dummy, and then surge with a DS, a pot, anticipate, ECB, target cycle, smoke cloud into a Gricko, rapid fire, into a bulk spec, snapshot into a dark bow, Gricko, tendies, dazing shot, incendiary shot, ECB, dark bow into a Gricko, rapid fire. Go ahead and hit a SGB spec, a snapshot into a dark bow spec into a Gricko, and that should be phase. There's phase. And then what I'm going to do here is spam my dazing shot. Go ahead and Nami, Gricko, piercing shot, just build up some stacks here. Dazing shot, piercing shot again. And then start my DS. ECB, bulk spec. And then here I'm going to hit Gricko, frag shot, run out, and hit my rapid fire. SGB, double dark bow. There's dark bow number 1, hit dark bow number 2. Limitless for the snapshot, not quite dead, so just kind of play with the rotation and improv if you need to. And that is a kill. So we'll go ahead and do another one. So once again, we will go ahead and grab some adrenaline, put on our prayers, stall our Nami, And you can go ahead and stop at 95% if you want, because the Greco here should give you the adrenaline you need. Once again, drop the dummy. Target cycle release into a Greco and a dazing shot. Dismiss the dummy. Wait a couple ticks and surge with the DS. A-pot, anticipate, ECB. Smoke cloud with a target cycle Greco. I was late there by a tick, but it should be fine. Rapid fire. Into a bulk spec, snapshot, into a dark bow. Greco with the Death Spore equip. Tendies. Dazing shot. Incendiary shot, ECB. Dark bow. Greco. Into a rapid fire. Into an SGB. Snapshot. Dark bow into a Greco and should be phased. Again, gonna go ahead and mash dazing shot. And Nami, Greco, piercing shot. Just hit a couple abilities. We're gonna build a Dren here. And I'm just gonna DS early because I can. ECB, Bolg spec, Greco, and I'm actually gonna hit a couple bleeds here. Just because I did start a little bit early, but then rapid fire. I did forget to switch my arrows over, but it is what it is. We'll just improv here a little bit, just do some decent abilities, should die real quickly. Forgot to equip my ring a little bit early, but that is kind of just some rough examples of this rotation. It can go quite a bit quicker. My PB right now is, I believe, a 114.4 using this rotation. I phased a little bit late there, and that's what allowed me to get off DS1 ability earlier than usual. Now, you might have noticed since I delayed by 1 tick on that target cycle, because I'm trying to, call out the rotation as I'm doing it, so I might miss ticks here and there. If you miss the tick, you are more likely to get the extra auto attack animation, and so that can cause delays, but typically the damage will more than make up for it. Assuming you have the tier 100 upgrade, that little bit extra does help out with consistency on this rotation. And one more note I do want to make here is that when I'm spamming the dazing shot here and I have my Wen arrows on, what I will do is preemptively equip my Death Spore arrows before I swap over to my staff to do a tsunami. Just because of my current keybind setup, swapping back over for Greco and swapping back to it I find a little bit annoying. I find it easier just to equip the Death Spores just a little bit sooner, but that is a personal preference based on my keybinds. You might find your mileage may vary a bit, but I believe I have yapped long enough. If you have any questions, feel free to leave it down in the comments below. This is a fun Dino Boss method, and if you have to farm out Dino Boss for, say, a bingo or a collection log, I highly recommend learning this rotation. But anyways, that's all I have for you today in this one. Thank you very much for watching. Your viewership is greatly appreciated. Have a wonderful morning, evening, afternoon, nighttime, whatever it is, wherever you are, and I will see you next time for the next guide. Peace.